I don't really need this. Agreed? For those of you who know me. Introduce Paul Ravenall and his wife Lita. Lita is an accomplished artist. If you go down to Rohan, it's Rohan, in one of the rooms, they got a little plaque on the wall, and she's got a picture of Lake Sumter Landing. So she's an accomplished artist. And Paul I've known for a long time, like since he's been here, I guess, 12 years. He's was past president and soon to be president maybe of the computer club. It's a long story. He does, if you ever need your computer worked on, there's a guy that they'll do it. Come out to your house, and it's very good. And he worked electronics, got a degree in electronics, hands-on type stuff, worked with computers for years and years and years. Now, if I'm saying anything that I shouldn't or misconstruing what you did, let me know. And then he worked for several companies and up with Wycliffe out of Orlando, and they translate Bibles, and I've heard his presentation before. It's very interesting. You'll be amazed at what you didn't know about the world. He knows about the world. And he's been a lot of places where nobody else wanted to go. So I introduce you to Paul Ravenall. That door closed. You got it? No, nothing. Maybe I should turn it on.
Is it muted?
Now, how's that? Oh, hey. It always helps to turn things on. That's my solution to most people's computer problems. Okay, I put a slide presentation together, which I had a lot of the slides, and I've used them over the last couple of years. However, I added some extra stuff because I thought I have a little more freedom here to talk to you guys about just cultural things and stuff we've run into over the years. That's just interesting stuff. I know at your age you've traveled, probably some of you have been around to many places, but I always say we went to places no one else would go to because they're not vacation spots. They're usually it's usually ministry stuff, and people are hurting there and just getting through the day, and having food is an accomplishment. Okay, Wycliffe Bible Translators is their corporate offices are in Orlando. I'll show you that a little bit. However, they work with a fair amount of other groups. Lutheran Bible Translators is another group, and of course, they do basically the same thing. Wycliffe is a large group. It's been around probably 60, 70 years now. It was founded by Cameron Townsend, so it's a pretty stable group, and it's not connected to any denominational thing. They translate the Bible, and they have guys that specialize in Greek and Hebrew, and they do word-for-word translations, and they slave over that. That is harder than you can imagine. I'm an IT guy, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the things we had to do, but I won't bore you with computer stuff. Don't worry about that. Okay. Okay. Couple of things. How we got involved in missions. I was in IT most of my life, and missions for us is more of a second career. The children were grown up, they're out of the house, and we sold everything we owned. At that time, we lived in Pennsylvania, and went off. We could move in our car. We had a 3-story barn and a big stone house in Pennsylvania, and we got rid of everything. And I remember still, to this day, getting in my car and feeling like a kid again. I didn't own anything. I thought, this is the greatest feeling at all when you don't own anything. And we'll talk a little bit about the Global South and what that means. That's a big deal right now. And then translation and the work of Wycliffe. Okay, this is our family, and the reason I show this picture. This is the whole family on vacation. They're a little older now, however, they. Let me get a pointer right here. I can point a few things out here. It won't.
Not on TV.
Oh, is that a TV?
There's a pointer right there in the corner.
Oh, it's okay. I don't need it.
An old-fashioned kind.
Yeah, no, I don't need it. Here, I can't use it. So the back row, you see the guy in the hat in the back row? He bombed our photo. We don't know who he is. Nobody was even with us. Guy. The guy in the middle here, I'm gonna have to use this. I'm not going to talk about our kids a lot, but this guy just graduated from the Green Berets. Okay, so that's an accomplishment. This guy is in airborne, and he's out in the West Coast, aviation mechanic, and so they're older now. And of course, this is our African couple, Kim and Ted. Where's Ted?
Up at the top, in the middle.
Up here, Ted, and then his son, his two girls, and this is his son, his wife. They've been in Africa most of their lives. Most of our travels to Africa would, in some cases, not always include a trip to see them, but it was not an easy trip. It was a long trip. Now, when you're in IT, if you look at that guy at the top with the hat on, I decided to remove him, okay? This is the headquarters in Orlando, okay? And Wycliffe headquarters, Wycliffe was on the West Coast in Huntington Beach. They moved shortly before we joined the organization. Huntington Beach is an expensive place to be. So they just cost related, they moved. Of course, Orlando kind of got expensive too over the years, but less than Huntington Beach. This is a beautiful facility that they built, and it's completely dedicated to translating the Bible. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. My office was there. I thought I'd point that out. And I enjoyed being there. It was really an enjoyable place to work with really neat people. Most of us are motivated by, most missionaries are motivated by this verse, okay? It's an important verse, okay? And I think that Jesus came and said to them, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you, and behold, I am always with you to the ends of the age. And you cannot do that without the Bible. Okay, if you didn't have the Bible, that would be a pretty impossible task. So let's just pray for a moment, and I'll say a prayer. Lord, thank you for the opportunity to be here today and share with you share with the group this information. We're always thankful to you for how you bless us and just the things that you do for us each day. The fact that we're even here and alive at this time is a blessing. We continue to look to you for guidance in our lives. We continue to look to you for guidance in our families' lives. And we just want to commit this time to you and pray this in your name. Amen. Now, a couple of things that we can talk about. These never make me feel great, but they also make me feel good knowing what's happening. Okay, knowing that there's a solution to this. But Christianity is shrinking and aging in the West. We're the West, but it's growing in the global South, where most Christians are now located. Now, we'll talk about that a little bit because it's interesting what's happening in the world right now in missions. And I'm not going to bore you with a lot of statistics, but this is important. The global South is a term that has been emerging to refer to what may be called the third world. We don't call it that anymore, but you can, but we don't. Developing countries or less developed countries, and also less developed regions. So we call now developing countries as a term, the politically correct term. And then the global South includes Asia, Central America, South America, Mexico, Africa, and the Middle East, okay, with the exception of those countries down there. So that's a huge geographic area. Nearly half of the workers, top missionaries sending countries are now located in the global South. So a huge amount of those countries are sending out missionaries now. A good example is countries like South Korea. South Korea, it's nothing to go to a church in South Korea and have 150,000 people in the church. They have large churches and they have goals. China had a goal not too long ago to send out 100,000 missionaries. Now you think China? but the Christian organizations there. Can you imagine 100,000 missionaries being unleashed on the world? South Korea is just waiting patiently for the wall, for that DMZ to come down. When that falls, there is an army of Christians waiting to go and evangelize the North. I mean, an army of people waiting to go and evangelize the North. So we are going to see a huge change in Christianity in the globe over the next 5-10 years. There were 240,000 missionaries in 1970. In 2000, that number grew to almost doubled to 440,000. By 2013, a trend called reverse missions was present, where younger churches in the global south started sending missionaries to Europe and the United States and places like that. Okay. The report noted that nearly half of the top 20 mission-sending countries in 2010 were in the global south. That included Brazil, India, the Philippines, and Mexico. Out of the 10 countries sending the most missionaries in 2010, 3 were in the global south: Brazil, South Korea, and India. The United States still sends a huge amount of missionaries to the field, and 127,000 in 2010 compared to 34,000 sent by number 2 ranked Brazil. That's still a lot of people. I think the impressive number here is we have an army of people that are spreading the word. It's not you never think of the numbers that are doing it. South Korea ranked number 5. South Korea, if you're talking about ministering in a country like Iran and Iraq, a Korean will be accepted there, okay? A guy from the States won't be, okay, for obvious reasons. So if you're Korean, the belief there is you would not be a Christian if you're Asian. Now, why that even would play out, I don't know, but it makes life easier for them to live there, where if I would go over to Iran, you'd be looked, especially coming from the States, you'd be looked at with suspicion. Okay. Wycliffe works in about 93 countries. It has been involved in more than 721 Bible translations, touching more than 80 million people. This is a video by a guy named Neil Anderson. Neil worked in Papua New Guinea, okay, and I think it's a great video because it's kind of just a guy that's working out in the jungles, and he's going to talk to us a bit. And he's very informal, but a pretty great guy. It's about 2 minutes, okay. So.
We've been sent with the gospel to the ends of the earth. Every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth. That's simple. Christ made it very simple. Take this good news to everybody. Go into all the world. And he put no limits on it. Go preach the gospel to everyone. Go make disciples of all nations. Any questions? He said, any questions? And I didn't even say any questions, but it was so simple. It hasn't changed. And it's that the church would realize it isn't just a job that some specialized group of people does. We're all supposed to be part of this. We're all supposed to be involved with reaching the world for Christ. We're all supposed to be involved in outreach. Every last person. Now the role might be different. Somebody's going to fly airplanes, and somebody else is the doctor, and somebody else is the technician, or even what is that video camera guy? Doesn't matter. The mission is the same. Go and make disciples of all nations. That's very clear. That's our task. And Jesus never asked anybody to go and translate the Bible. We just realized that how can they understand the message unless it's in their language? It's kind of like, you got to figure that out, you know. Somebody's got to do that hard work. And it is hard work. And it does take a team. And it takes a lot of people back. The team extends further than this team. The team is a bunch of people praying thousands of miles away, giving sacrificially, loving people when they have a breakdown, things like that. That's what it takes. It's not like a miracle a minute ever. There's a lot of hard stuff, a lot of setbacks, a lot of disappointments, but when we're a team, we draw encouragement from each other. When we're down, the other person lifts us up. And I think people need to realize that they're part of the greatest thing that's ever happened in the history of the universe, and that is that the gospel is being given to the nations. And that's what we're part of. We're part of something really tremendous, something eternal, something that makes more difference than Wall Street times 1,000. What we're into here is really, nothing can ever touch it, can never fade or spoil, or nothing can detract from it. Your labor in the Lord is not in vain. And so why would somebody want to do that? Well, to me that's a dumb question. Why wouldn't you want to do that?
He's a guy that was, you know, when the term culture shock is a term that's been used, but culture shock is moving to another culture and basically realizing that you're going to be there for a while. We visited a lot of places. Well, I never had culture shock visiting. I was always impressed by the change of culture, but culture shock is knowing you're not going home for a while. You're going to be there for this is where you're going to be maybe for the rest of your life or a good portion of your life. And when that settles in, that can be pretty draining on a family and a wife and a husband to realize that this is the way they're going to live without water, without electricity, and this is their life. Over 7,000 people are directly engaged with Wycliffe. 3,500 of them are coming from Wycliffe, U.S. And part of the groups that we work with are almost every major Bible translation group. Wycliffe has developed tools for Bible translation. Most of those are computer tools. In the old days, the guys that went out, like Neil and his predecessors, translated the Bible on 3x5 cards. I mean, they wrote down 3x5 cards of every verse in the Bible and then translated them on 3x5 cards. And then if they had to change, they had to go back and change all that. I mean, the job was monumentous. Now, that has been made a lot easier with technology, where you can go in and search, and even the technology tools that Wycliffe has designed are in most colleges now linguistic programs in colleges. Wycliffe was founded in 1942 by Cameron Townsend. Okay, he's the guy that was out on a mission field in Guatemala. He was working with the Cachicol Indians, and he was a college guy. He's just a young kid. The men expressed their concern that the Bible was not available in their language, and they expressed it in a much different way than is on here. They said, "Your God is so great, yet He can't even you can't put the language in my language. You can't put the Bible in my language." Well, that convicted Cameron to hear that, and as a result, he resolved that every man, woman, and child will be able to read God's word in their language. Now, think about this. You get a 20-year-old guy that's not even graduated from college yet. He's on that field, and he hears this message, okay? And this is a clear sign of how God will bless things that are meant to be. He started Wycliffe Bible Translators from that, okay? And he never went back and graduated from college, which is amazing. He started one of the largest Bible translation organizations in the world today. And, of course, Cameron is not alive anymore. His wife was still alive, dear woman. She's a very humble woman, met every leader in the world and had an audience with every leader in the world. She was a well-respected lady. He learned their language, which is fairly complex, and then translated the New Testament in a span of 10 years. Okay, now they say the remarkable span of 10 years. I think that's a long time, but he was able to go through and translate in a 10-year period, translate the New Testament. And he was not a linguist, so it was, it was especially difficult, a chore. Wycliffe is associated with the Summer Institute of Bible, the Summer Institute of Language, and the Summer Institute of Linguistics, and that is really the working arm of Wycliffe. So you have Wycliffe, who raises funds and gets people. You have SIL, Summer Institute of Linguistics. They're in Dallas, Texas. They actually do the work of Bible translation. So if you join Wycliffe, you will be seconded or loaned to SIL. And that's, if you're a linguist, that's where you'll work, okay, in SIL. And JARS was a technical group in North Carolina that did a lot of the aviation work, computer work, radio, shortwave radio work. They were the guys that really supplied services to the field people who were in the field. So you could not, JARS was founded basically by Cameron when he was in an airplane accident and almost lost his life flying into some of these remote places. He realized that they had to put something together more reliable for the missionaries so their lives weren't at risk every time they went and flew with these local aviation companies. I never saw Cameron Townsend. Okay, I never met him, but like I say, we talked to his wife quite a bit. A chance to reflect back and think a little bit about how we got involved. It's kind of interesting when I think about it to some degree. We were raised as church people. Okay, we went to church, our parents didn't necessarily go. My parents, they took me to church, but I still was in church. I met Lita in church. We were married in 1962. We gave birth to 3 children. We adopted 3 children. Why would we do that? I know we're crazy. And we had room, and we felt it was a thing to do. We were saved in late 1979. A friend came over to the house and talked to us about the Lord, and we realized that we were basically going to church, okay? We were doing the things that we thought we should do, but we really didn't have a very good personal relationship with the Lord. And of course, he did, and we just said a prayer, and we got much more committed to the Lord. Through that, we decided to join another church where the pastor was much more of a teacher, and we learned a lot at that time. We met missionaries at that time. Carl and Joanne Moyer were missionaries in Africa. They served their whole life in the Congo, and they were great people. They just basically lived in Tanzania, a place called I forget the name of where Tatanda, and they just work with the people there. Most of the work you do in Africa is really supporting programs that sustain the people. You cannot expect the people to listen to anything you say if they're starving to death. They're just not. Their goal is to get through the day and live, and they're not really that. They're not that interested in what you say at that time. They're too busy with the other projects. So you have to get the people at least to a point where they're ready to listen to you. Okay. We attended a Wycliffe Associates banquet. That was a group that was an organization who really had banquets on recruiting for Wycliffe, and they said they needed computer people. And so that tweaked us right away, because we thought, computer people, we figured we'd have to be a pastor or someone like that. That computer people wouldn't, how would they help? And we realized soon, like Neil said, it's like a battleship. You know, you have or an aircraft carrier. You have X number of pilots, but most of the staff on there is supporting those pilots. And so we decided to follow that lead, and it was not easy because we had to raise our own support. Okay, Wycliffe doesn't pay you, so you have to go raise your own support like a missionary would, and. So it wasn't a long haul, but it was a dramatic change in our lifestyle. And people used to think I was crazy because I had a very good job at that time. And they said, the one young guy said to me, he said, why are you doing this? Why would you leave your job and go do that? And I said, well, he said, are they making you do it? Like they had something on me. I said, no, we want to do it. We're not. And so it was just funny, but it makes you think a little bit. And Lita was also thought that was remarkable that you could use, that we could be used in that way. I remember going through a cafeteria line after we were in Wycliffe a while, and not long, like the first couple weeks, and there was a guy serving food, and he slapped some mashed potatoes down on my plate, and I said, "What do you do?" He said, "I do Bible translation." And I thought, what a great, that's exactly what, he's serving potatoes in the cafeteria, but he's doing Bible translation. And that kind of summed it all up. I mean, you can just, everybody is used for that purpose. Then we had a bunch of kids when we went to that banquet that were almost out of high school and college, and we sought advice from a couple people because we didn't know what to do. They said, wait, don't leave now. Your kids are all in high school. To yank them out of all that at this time will disrupt their lives too much. So it's not that long until they'll be settled. And we took that advice and waited a while until we did this. We attended Quest, which was a training program for Wycliffe. We raised support, and we began in 1997 in Dallas. And those are great times. We expected to serve overseas. Wycliffe at that time was going through something called Vision 2025. The president of Wycliffe at that time realized that it would take them on year 2000 to get a work started in every one of the remaining languages that weren't done, which was like 1800, 2000, somewhere in that range. It would take another 150 years, okay? And he just couldn't cope with that. So he said, we're going to make a Vision 2025, and we want to get a work started by 2025. Well, everybody thought he was crazy. That would be impossible to do, okay? The price tag on that was close to $1 billion. Wycliffe never, they were supported by just older people who were given donations and that. They never thought of dollar amounts that big, okay? But they're today on a path of about from 2150, which was 2100, which was 150 years from 2000. They're now on a Bible translation goal to have a work started in every one of the remaining languages by 2038. So they've shrunk that tremendously. And the way they've done it is they're now using teams to do translation. Most of the countries have very capable people now. The South Korean people are unbelievably well educated. They can do this work. We don't have to do this all anymore. So Wycliffe moved from a doing it mentality to a facilitating mentality. That people went kicking and screaming into that, because when you're a doer and you're doing the work, you don't really trust other people to do it for you. So that took a while to get into that mode. And then I worked in IT, and that goal of 2025 rendered every one of the computer systems at Wycliffe obsolete. Okay, if we were going to do that, we had to change the way we were doing business. We had to change the way we did things. We had millions of lines of old COBOL code that the president of DEC, of Digital Equipment, gave to us, all the computer equipment. He gave us millions of dollars of computer equipment, 10, 15 years ago, which was obsolete at that time. So we had to move everything to a new platform. A 60-year-old organization, okay, you are now changing everything in the organization, okay? The other thing I wanted to show you there is Lita, my wife, she served as the webmaster for one of the organizations, and she was a corporate secretary for both the JARS and Wycliffe. And the webmaster job was a great job because she was not a technical person, but her option was to take housing. Well, after raising 6 children, she don't have anything to do with housing, so she said, I'll do the webmaster. What I have to cope with, I'll cope with. This is the JARS area here. This is an airstrip. This is a very nice place in North Carolina, and we spent quite a bit of time there in working in the technical field and supporting the field operations. This is Wycliffe in Orlando. We moved there when we decided to get involved in this 2025 and reorganizing all their computer systems. Now, we met as a group, and we decided we had to change everything. But how would you do that? How would you even think of doing that? You're involved in every country in the world. You now have to change all the computer systems. So we picked, we have very intelligent people in Wycliffe. They have more PhDs than anyone in the world. That's also a problem, but it's a good thing too. So they now we have these group of highly capable people that we pulled together to decide how we're going to do this. They picked a solution called the Zachman framework. Okay, Zachman was a guy who worked for IBM. He didn't anymore at that time, but he invented the framework, and the framework was the framework for enterprise architecture. It's how to redesign large companies and do it properly. However, it's complicated, and we all looked at it and figured we're never going to pull this off. So we went into just not a state of depression, but just what are we going to do? And we left it go for a while. There was a conference in Orlando I went to, and we were in North Carolina at the time, and I sat at a table. I got there late. I sat at a table, and there were about probably 12 guys at the table, and the one guy talked to me completely. He looked at me, made you feel uncomfortable if you've ever been in that situation. You're sitting around a table, and the guy's just talking to you, and the whole table is filled with people. And so after it was over, he came up and said, "Do I know you?" I said, "I don't think so. My name's Paul Redman." He said, "My name's John Zachman." Okay, John Zachman was the consultant for the Zachman framework. He knew how to do this. And I said, "John Zachman, you authored the Zachman framework?" "Yes." Now, he was getting paid at that time $5,000 a day, and you couldn't get him. I mean, he was booked out for years and would fly all over the world. So I said, I'm with Wycliffe. He said, "Oh, I know all about Wycliffe. I support Wycliffe." "Really? Would you help us do this?" He said, "Sure, here's my card." I figured he blew me off. The next week, I called him, and he's in California. And so I'm trying to get him to see if he was real with me or just wanted to get rid of me. He said, "I'll tell you what, my mother is in a, what do you call these facilities, extended care, assisted living, they're all around. She's in an assisted living it was only about 5 miles from where our offices were in North Carolina. I'm coming to visit her next week. So I'll stop in and we can talk about it." I thought, unbelievable. God puts together an impossible situation that we even met this guy. He was truly the expert on this. And then he started guiding us through the whole process. Okay, it was kind of neat, and he really stuck with us till the end. It took years of meetings. I mean, the guy gave up a lot of his personal income to do that. The progress of Bible translation in the 1400s, John Wycliffe and the Bible, King James Version, modern missionary movement, and then John Wycliffe. Once Bible translation was formalized, that's when it really started taking hold. And you can see the up click on the number of Bibles that were translated. So about 7,000 languages are active in the world today. 1.5 billion people are without the full Bible in their first language. 2,267 known active translations. These are programs in process, and additional Bible translations right now are around 1,800. Okay, so there's about 1,800 ago. That's a lot. That's a lot. Thinking it was taking 13 to 14 years for each one. That's a lot of time. Okay, most of them are, a lot of them, 700 are in Central Africa, mainland and Southeast Asia is about another 500, and Indonesia and the Pacific Islands about another 600. It's hard to think there's 600 languages on those islands, okay? But so 1,800 languages that adds up to, okay? 5 generations to complete the task was not adequate, okay? So another convicting statement was a guy in a village saying, "How long have you had this book? Did your father have it?" your grandfather. Why has it taken so long for you to share it with us? And so those are great motivating statements. This is a group of Chinese Christians receiving the Bible, okay, the translated Bible. Now, what they did is they spent years putting the translated Bible into their language. This day right here is the day that the printed Bibles arrived, and they could hand them out at that time, okay? But I want you to pay particular attention because we should get so excited about getting the Bible. Well, I know you couldn't understand it, but just the emotion of just getting Bibles is just if you're not motivated to work in Wycliffe, when you see these, then it gives you a new energy. So Vision 2025 was really to see a language project started. Okay, it won't be done by 2025, but started in all the remaining languages. And they're well on a good way to do that. I talked about completely redoing everything. That's a picture of John Zachman. I think he died. I don't think he's around anymore. Great guy. He used to pray in the restaurants. I remember him. I'm not even sure where we went to church. I mean, I should know that, but I don't know. I probably did know it at one time. But when we go out to dinner, he'd pray for the whole restaurant. He'd pray for, everybody. I thought, this guy's a riot. He's just, he said, when he works, he can't do this. When he works, he can't go into a place of business and talk about Bible things. But he said, being involved with Wycliffe, he can now use that as an example and talk to anybody he wants to about the Bible. So he's quite the guy. We spent many meetings like this. This doesn't look exciting. And it wasn't. Oh my goodness, I thought I was going to go crazy. Just writing these, one after another. We just putting together all the pieces of data and the business processes of a 60-year-old organization with 7,000 people, and all the work, all the other organizations we were involved with. Oh my goodness, it was painful. And the fact that I didn't go crazy. I know when Stan Locke was a guy from Canada who was an expert in semantic modeling, it's called. It's modeling the business processes. He would help us work through this, and great guy, but very, very draining work. Just laboring over how everything's connected. These were meetings we had in our house. Lita would cook dinner for everybody. And we get together and have a crowd like that from that in our house. So that once we got that all defined, we started working. Then you got to write the code. I mean, you just put together the systems. You still got to build the systems. I set up a programming team in Chennai, India. Chennai is on the southeast of India. It's on something called the tropical equator. It's one of the hottest places in the world. You think Orlando's hot? I mean, that's just. They used to actually say to people, "Don't move to that. Or if you're moving there, I think don't do it during that time. You'd kill yourself. It's so hot during the day that it'll just ruin you." So we spent time. A guy named Sudik Datasoft. He had a business in India, so he decided to give us a whole floor of his office in India that we could use, and we'd have to find programmers. He did he did a translation for doctors. You get doctors and you get stuff worked on and they record it. You might not see it, but they record it when they're in their office. And then they send it to him in India. Okay, they ship it to India. We laid tremendous amount of fiber optics to India back in the day. And the company that did it, I forget their name now, but they went out of business. But all the fiber optic was laid across the ocean. So they were able to use that because no one owned it. Basically, it was good, it was worked, and they used that. That's what connected us to India. That's why we've been able to. That's why India has been able to thrive, because that whole fiber optic system was instant communications with India. So they were able to set up help desk and things like that. Now, please don't. Confuse India with your last help desk experience that you called on, okay? That's not India, okay? I feel so bad for the Indian people right now because the reputation that they've gotten through people that are less than credible, who, the Indian people are wonderful people. They just, I think the companies that those companies that they're working for are just horrible. But they had a nice office. This is Tom and his wife. They're great Christians, and they were able to give us that. This is the office manager on the right. This is her husband. He was in the building business in India. They had quite a bit of wealth. They lived in an apartment that had a lot less room than a villa here in the villages. I mean, but they were extremely wealthy people. But you just don't have, there's no land in India. It's too packed with people. You don't want to go to India if you're a little claustrophobic, okay? It'll drive you crazy. There's just a million people all over the place. This is the personnel director. He helped us when we had to do hiring. Hiring was an interesting cultural thought. The young guys that you interviewed with you are very respectful, however, very family related, okay? So if a 25-year-old guy would earn his money and send it all home to his parents, and they would send him an allowance back, okay? And so and that's the way they lived. They never expected anything different than that. The mom and dad still picked the bride for the boy. And I asked a couple guys how they felt about that. How do you feel about your mom and dad picking your bride? They said, yeah, what do I know? They got to know more than me. And I thought that's quite true, but nobody here in this country thinks that way. I can imagine me picking the bride for my kids. Everywhere you go in India, there are multiple languages. So you are confronted, anything you do in India, you're confronted with tremendous amount of cultural division in languages. You go to a site to visit one of the local sites, and here's what you'll see. Where we might have it in Spanish and something like that. Here's what you see: one sign, another language, another language, another language, another language. The Bibles, they have a rich history of Bible translation at this point. That's a Tibetan Bible, and they've converted the Bible in a lot of the more popular languages. Okay, but great people. Okay, we had a great time there. The girls and guys are very separate. So if you go to a party or a picnic, the girls will be on one side, the guys will be on another. When they dance, if they have music there to dance, a lot of this was non-Christian picnics because it was a company there, and he hired other people. He not only hired Christian people. But when you dance, the guys would dance and the girls would dance, but they wouldn't dance together. So the guys would dance. It looked a little funny, but they would just dance and swing around. And then the girls would dance, but they would not dance together like we would dance with holding on to a girl. Oh, no, you would never do that. So it was kind of interesting. Although they have babies, somewhere they get together along the line. There's a grandmother holding a little baby. But there's a huge amount of temples and religious diversity, and so many are lost and worshiping a huge amount of different opinions. They built beautiful structures, and this is the one party where the girls and guys sit at places. This is a team of programmers, very intelligent guys, very capable, intelligent people. I mean, they're well trained. They all get hired. None of them don't get hired. And one of the reasons for that is they make sure they're going to be successful. There's no slacking off. they learn stuff and they go at it till they learn it. They do not give up. They're dedicated young people trying to get ahead. And having a job for them and getting paid, even though it's a lower wage than you will get paid here, it's a much higher wage than they get anywhere in India. So they feel it an honor to be able to have a job. We spent a fair amount of time in India. The reason I'm sharing this is just to give you a little bit of idea. Has anybody been to Tanzania here? Have you been to Africa? Probably anybody Africa. There's a great place to visit. I know that the travel agencies will run safaris to Africa and stuff like that, and they're neat. They're expensive, okay? So I was always shocked. I went down here to one of the travel groups when they were in town at one of the rec centers, and there was a guy running a trip to Tanzania, and when I heard how much it was, I thought, oh my goodness, I can't believe that it doesn't cost that much if you're there. I mean, the markups are horrendous. So we were there staying at a game park one time, and my son's a resident in Tanzania. Yeah, the guy who ran the game park said to us, we stayed overnight, he said, all I want you to do is don't tell any of the other guests how much you're paying. Because we were paying like $40 a night, and they were paying $400 a night. And so, they had beautiful china set up in the evening to eat on a riverbed. It was beautiful, but it's costly. Now, Tanzania, if you live there, they give you a break. That's not the case in the United States. If you go during the holiday time and you go to a resort, just because you live in the United States, you're not going to get it at half the price or a third the price. You probably pay more, actually. But Tanzania is a large country. Our Wycliffe offices were up here in Kenya. Okay, our son lived down here. Okay, he went there after college, and he's in missions as well. He does community development work, and that ride we've only done twice in our lives. I think one time we came down here. That is many days of driving, many days of driving. That's a long, hard ride on bad roads, okay? So this is the office over there. Obviously, you work with what you got. Okay, it's not very orderly, but it works. You hook everything up. Look at all the wires in the background. You're figuring out where they are. Yeah. I love doing this, drive around the Land Cruiser. I mean, my son let me do that until I ran over a bunch of chickens, and he said, the name of the missions is on the side. He said, you're just giving us a bad name. You cannot drive anymore. We flew in one time in an airstrip, a grassy airstrip. This plane was great. It's a pretty sizable plane. We flew in smaller planes. Right in the bottom here, I thought I smelled aviation fuel. I thought I smelled fuel when we took off, but we didn't fly in enough small planes to know if that was an issue or not, so I figured it was just normal. But right in the bottom here, the baggage is in here, okay? So when we took out the baggage, the whole bottom of that baggage area was pooled with aviation fuel. And it was leaking out of the carburetor. And the whole plane, if it would have caught fire, it would have blew the plane out of the sky. It would have been unbelievable. And yet we landed not knowing it. So the pilot was kind of playing it down a little bit. And the pilot, not that guy, but the other guy who flew the airplane, his name was Geronimo. So I thought, Geronimo, we're flying into Africa with a pilot named Geronimo with aviation pool all over the thing. But he got it fixed. They were able to take off the next day. I said to him, what happens if you have a problem? He said, oh, Africa. He said, you can land anywhere. He said, it's not a big deal. There's always a place to land. Right. Water heat, when you got there and you want to take a shower, this is what you use, a hot water heater, solar. The water's brown because the river is brown, okay? It's a muddy water. So when you get in the shower, you're happy the water is warm, okay? You have a warm shower. However, it's brown. So you're taking a shower. When you're done, you don't know if you're dirtier than when you started, okay? You feel cleaner, but you don't. Ladies, that's what you cook on, okay? And so you do have help. It's nice because you have the Africans are always looking for a way to earn a little bit of money. The last time I was, well, not the last time, first time I was over, I had to go get water. Okay, my son had a 3-wheeler with a trailer on the back, and I went down the stream to get water. Well, a guy came out of the woods, 3 guys come out of the woods, and they walk up to me, don't smile at all, they're walking right up to me, I'm thinking, what is going on? They take the bucket out of my hand, and they start filling up the things for me. So I thought, oh, this is nice. So I gave them, I think I gave them $1 each, maybe, or something. So I got back up to the top of the hill, we're driving up, and I told my son I gave him $1 each. He said, what? You give him $1 each? He said, you can't pay these guys like that. They earn like $0.25 a day. You just gave them 4 days worth of wages just for emptying a couple buckets. I said, well, how do I know? I said, tell them it's your rich father from America, and he's just throwing around his money, okay? But what Ted doesn't know is I would have given him $5. I did not want to do that. I was shot. The altitude's high, and I was just happy they were there. But he was having a fit because I gave him $1. This is what you live like you did many years ago in the United States. Okay, you have kerosene lights. There was no electric in at that time, and women, that's how they get water. They carry 5-gallon buckets of water every day, lots of them, from the well. They actually have water pumping out of a tank, and they walk underneath it with that on their head, and they leave the bucket fill up, and then they just turn around and walk away. But you know, 5 gallons of water on your head is a lot of water. And they all have necks like wrestlers, like they were. And these are some of the kids here. That's my one granddaughter. She's a lot older now. But we took balloons over, and so they filled balloons with water. And that's fun in anybody's language. They have to raise everything or go hunting, okay, because there's no grocery stores around. So, and then you become pretty good. That's Teddy. Becomes pretty good. You become pretty good at cutting up meat, okay. If you're a vegetarian, you won't like that. But, and then this is a group of guys. None of them are there now in that station. They were all there and working hard and for many years, but they've all, things change in countries, the government changes, things change all the time. So you get settled working at a place maybe for 10, 12 years, and in 2 weeks you have to leave because your visa has an issue or whatever. So it's hard on them, but a great group of dedicated guys. And when you sleep under a mosquito net. I never quite got used to that. Growing, lots of things grow beautifully there. There's nothing that doesn't grow in Tanzania. The ground is rich, and especially out in that area. I couldn't help it.
Never looks at it.
Yeah. I definitely need a haircut. Bricks, they make bricks by hand. Okay, the women bend over all day at their waist. I don't know how they do it, and they bend over and they mix wooden molds with mud, and then they go from one to the other. They have thousands of them on the ground. They'll make 200,000 bricks, and they work like that all day long, bending over at their waist. I can't even do it. I mean, and doing that. And then what they'll do is they'll let holes in those. They'll let holes in them. These didn't have that. And then they'll load them with wood, and they'll start a fire, and they'll fire the brick, and the brick will get fairly hard. Not like this brick we get, but pretty good. And that's what they use to build the houses with. And those are fired. Okay, that's the way they'll look, fired. And they're used to build homes. There's a home built with the bricks. And so they do a good job. They do a nice job. However, you could take a screwdriver and just turn it through that brick. I mean, it wouldn't be easy, but you could do it. You could never do that with brick that are fired here in the States. We put the electrical work in. I went over to put the electric in, had a break, and I decided to do that. And that's not an easy job because you have to carve out, like you carve a hole for the electrical box, and then they'll plaster over all that. But I didn't know what I was getting myself into. When you saw the floor plans of that building, it didn't look big. Okay, when you got over there and realizing that what you took on, I thought, oh my goodness. And when I got there, the first 10 minutes of me being in the getting out and getting unloaded, one of the pastors, one of the missionaries died, so they all left to go to the funeral, and the guy that was with me said, I'm not going anywhere else. I just rode around for 4 days. I feel like I've been beat up. I am not going anywhere. I don't care who died. So I had to stay with him. So we're at that location all by ourselves with nobody around, no help, nothing, no way out, no phone calls, no communications, and we're sitting there just waiting for them to get back. And so. Yeah, that building is a dispensary, by the way. Okay, they built a dispensary, so a doctor from the States wound up stopping his practice and went over and worked there for years at that dispensary. I remember riding through the village one time, and a guy with a big piece of skin hanging out of his leg, he got cut, and I don't know how that would happen, that you get that much flesh hanging outside your leg. He stopped me and wanted me to fix it. I said, Ted, what's this all about? He said, he thinks you're working at the dispensary. You must know how to. I said, I'm putting in electric wiring. I don't have any idea how to do that. But they'll let you do anything because you went to college. You got to know how to do everything, right? I mean, brain surgery. You could do brain surgery. This is a big deal, getting your tooth pulled, okay? Our son, Ted, pulls about 13 to 15 teeth a week. I think it's up now. He specializes in tooth pulling because some old guy taught him how to pull teeth over there. The people have nowhere to go. So this is their only outlet. So I don't know, I haven't had a toothache for a long time, but I remember having a toothache. It is horrible. You know, when your tooth is destroying itself, it gets so painful. So they'll come from miles around and line up. He gets whatever you give a shot from now from the dentist. It's not Novocaine, but it's lidocaine, yeah, something. And then they'll line up in his garage, and then he will. And you can see this girl, her look on her face. Okay, the reason that's a look because she's looking at this table. And these are all tools he got from dentist here. But if I went to the dentist and saw that, I would run out the door. I don't care if he's doing. And then Ted will pull teeth, okay, and he does that. He suits up. He has gloves and a mask on and everything, and they are so happy to get this done. I mean, she's gripping onto his leg. And the equipment is great. That thing he has around his head, you buy at Home Depot, you know. And the kids are beautiful. The kids are great. They really are. Very good. This, I'm going to show you this. This is a church service in a village church, okay? And probably one of the most remote places there are, and I think you'll get a kick out of it. It's kind of neat. Now you would recognize this song if it was in English, but because it's a church song. And the shirts that you see on those guys, okay, the ones that Samsung, well, they'll get shirts. Those are shirts from all over the world. They get there. Well, every now and then you get a shirt with a really inappropriate saying on, but they don't know it. They don't know. So you got to figure out how to get this shirt from them because they didn't know. And the music, if you need electricity, this is how you get it. They put a generator outside the church and they run it, and that powers. If they get they'll get a guitar that sometimes is an electric guitar, and their theory is just turn the volume all the way up. You might as well turn it all the way up, get the most out of it, and then they hook this to it. But if you notice in the middle of that wire, okay, This is how they connected the generator to that. OSHA would not approve of that, okay? And there's kids running around all over the place, and they hook it up. This is how it's hooked up. And then after church, everybody gathers outside and then in a big circle, and then you go around and shake everybody's hand, okay? So everybody that comes out just adds to the circle, and then everybody behind you shakes the hand of everybody that went out ahead of you. It's kind of neat. And then we went to the village to look. They had a preacher that was going to preach in the village, and this is the first time I really was in a village like this. These kids are not well taken care of. I mean, you can tell. They did the same thing here, set up a generator and try to get some music. But these kids, look at these kids. Oh my goodness, they're some of them are better than others, but some are just are just neglected. They're just. They used to say the kids were good. They're not good. They're just lethargic. Nobody talks to them. They don't get any interactions. They just aren't taken care of well at all. But they're kids. Kids will be kids. They're all kids, and they're little troublemakers in the group. Like that guy in the middle. You just know he's trouble, man.
He's watched too much television.
Yeah, but look at their shirts. I mean, their shirts are just. And then there's a tribal group there called the Wasakumu tribe. If you notice, they always wore very elegant clothing, colored well, and that. But those days are gone. You know, those days are kind of gone. But they still maintain their tribal identity. So, and tribal fighting in Tanzania, I was around a campfire one time, and I asked the guys, what do you think about white guys? And they said, no, they call them Wasa. They call them, but they said, no, we like white people. We don't like the tribe next to us. And I thought, that's the whole problem with a country like Africa. They can't get along with each other. I thought, if we live in the villages here, okay? So every village is here. I was thinking, to relate it, every village would do whatever it can to mess up the other village. So when you go get our mail, we'd stick chewing gum in all the mailboxes, things, and we do things that. That's how they live. I mean, they hate their neighbor, and what they'll do is they'll do everything they can. They'll buy fetishes at the witch doctors and put them in their house so that your garden dies. If you have a garden, it would die. They do stuff like that. They manipulate everything. And part of the animistic culture, where you worship the mountains and the sky and the sun and the moon, part of that culture is, it almost sounds neat. We're going to worship things that are, but they manipulate it to get their own advantage. So it never turns out neat. It always turns out a form of manipulation. And that's why the gospel is a special message, okay? It's clear, okay? It's not one of manipulation. And they know it. When they hear it, they know it. This is a bunch of, you sit there and kids gather around you, and they're always around you. Kids are everywhere. And they'll keep crouching up closer and closer and closer and closer to you. So there's no room left at all. And here, look at that guy on the right. And there's always kids that are crazy kids. So they love getting in a picture. They've never seen a picture, but they know it's a picture somehow, and they love getting in a picture taken. This is a guy who's preaching there. There's an old guy in the village. Old people get tremendous respect. I get much more respect there than I do here. But they'll make a place for you at the church to sit in the church. It makes you feel a little uncomfortable, but you almost have to go along with it because they want you. They want to honor you. And the old African guys that have been around a while he found that suit somewhere. I don't know where he got that suit, but I'm sure. And kids, more kids all over the place. Now, this is the difference between the worship service in the church, and this is kind of the same kind of worship service in the marketplace. Okay, they'll do it totally differently because it's almost like a little show here. Okay, so, now I know this will feel foreign when you think about a group like this in your church on Sunday performing on the stage of the church. You can picture that and see how this would make everybody feel. The guy with his stick. That's a crippled guy in the front. He's polio, and so there's no facilities to help. They crawl around like that. There's no wheelchairs or things like that. When our grandson grew up in Africa, and he came to the States, got a degree in business, and went back. He wanted to get a job in Tanzania if he could, just because he considered that his home. He grew up his whole life there. So here's a white guy in Africa, and he thinks like that. He grew up in the villages. Okay, so he's a little white African kid. He thinks like they do, and you would normally think. I mean, they think differently. The stuff he does, I would never do, but he does it right. Well, when he was interviewed by it was a food exporter that he met that wanted to hire him to work at, and run that part of that business because he knew the culture so well. The guy said, Colton, I'm not hiring you because you know Swahili. I'm hiring you because you love these people. And I thought, well, that's a great honor, because this, you can see, it would be hard to love these people. I mean, it wouldn't be, I mean, I don't say that mean, but you got a whole bunch of dirty old little kids that are just filthy. It's just, it's hard, but he truly loves these people. When we visit, he'd be down in the waters talking to the fishermen. You know, go to a restaurant, he'd be out back talking to the cook. I mean, he just truly had a heart for these people. And so guys that go minister there, we can be happy we have guys that will go minister there, because that's still a little difficult for me to go there and mix in as much as they do. I don't know how long that would take. But they're all they're all great people. The people are honest and for the most part, and will give you anything. They're pretty much for the most part really great people. And this is a road out of town. We're leaving. And all the kids run after you until they can't run anymore. So Wycliffe's work is also leveraged. You heard of the Jesus film? Okay, the Jesus film is done by Campus Crusade, and that's probably the most shown film in the world. Okay, the Jesus movie. When they used to show it in the villages, people were crying and doing anything. They didn't know anything about Jesus, and they'd be crying. It was a while to understand that they thought it was really happening. They thought they were watching a movie, and this was happening when they watched it, that Jesus was getting crucified right now. And this is a movie of the actual crucifixion. And they could not understand why somebody would go to all the trouble to reenact it. You know, that you go to all that trouble to reenact it and make a movie of it. So it was a while to just understand that, and then realize that, try to tell them that this is not happening. This is not the real crucifixion. This is a reenactment. But it took a while for that to settle in. So the Jesus film has been translated to many, many languages. Okay, and it's been through the work of Wycliffe, who translates the language, and then they take the Jesus movie and take all the words and translate it to that language. Keep in mind, the languages of translation are not written down. So they're undocumented languages, and I'm sure you understand that, but it's not like I had a guy come from try to sell me a device that did translation work when I was at Wycliffe. He said, this will translate for you. Talk into it and it will translate. I said, no. It can't. This language has never been documented. It can't. It can translate German and it can translate Italian, but you can't translate a language that has never been written down. He could not understand that. I said, listen, if you have a device that'll do that, we'll buy it from you at any cost. Okay, but he just couldn't get through his head that the language was not written down. So the Jesus movie, every 8 seconds, somewhere in the world, another person indicates a decision to follow Christ after watching the Jesus film. It's the power of the Word of God in their heart language. You have to have the Word of God. You have to have the Bible in your heart language. You can learn another language. Swahili in Africa and Tanzania is a trade language. Okay, there's 400 languages in Tanzania. They're all tribal languages. Okay, whether they'll all be translated or not is another story. But people speak in Swahili, but that's not their heart language. It's like you learning another language and it's not English, and you're going to speak. You know you're not going to have the same richness of that language and understanding as you would as your native tongue heart language. And you can download the Jesus movie and watch it if you want. Of course, it's free. And these are the kind of crowds you get. We used to get huge crowds. We would set up a bed sheet on a PVC pipe and showed the Jesus movie, and there would be thousands of people come. I say thousands, maybe not thousands, but a lot. We'd fill a huge area. They'd sit there shivering. They'd be there shivering. It would be cold at night, and they'd stay there for the whole, watch the whole movie. Music is a big deal, okay, and I'm almost done here. But ethnomusicology is a study of music, and of course, music is a powerful media to have people to work with people through music. And a lot of the music, the old missionaries used to take an organ over there and make everybody sing hymns and that. Well, those days are gone. They go over, and a lot of the people write their own music and write their own hymns. Or translate hymns to their own music, and sometimes the music they play is horrible sounding to you, but to them it sounds great. They love it. And there was one case we had an international convention, and the guy sang, and I don't understand enough about music, but it was the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. But they said, no, that's exactly that. They relate to that. That sounds great to them. I could not figure that out at all. So you have a whole study. Non-Roman scripts, a lot of our stuff is in non-Roman script. So you have scripts that are not our ABC characters. So to make up scripts that have not been documented, that Microsoft is doing good work with that right now on accommodating language scripts. But a lot of them have to be designed, and if you need all those people to create a script in another language that's not written down. Most of them are. We're getting to a point where most of the languages have documented scripts, but there are some of them. And then people read from right to left or left to right, from bottom to top or top to bottom, so it gets confusing, to say the least. If you want to go to an interesting site, the Ethnologue, www.ethnologue.com, that has on it all the information of all the cultures of the world, all the languages of the world, all 7,000 languages, people groups. Studies have been done in every one of those. Wycliffe conducts language studies before it goes in and does any translation work. So they have the people, the size of the group, a bit about their cultural background, where they're located, on and on and on. So you get a tremendous amount of information on there, an unbelievable amount of information on there. There's a guy named Richard Pittman that found that. That was Pittman. Was that the guy who did language, tonal languages? Who was that? Oh, that Pittman was not that guy. But there was a guy who developed written tonal language. He learned how to write down tonal languages. And tonal languages are when you change the tone of a word, it changes its completely meaning. So da, da, da. So you can change the meaning of the word. He learned how to write that down. He was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, but never got it, but it was nominated. I used to talk to him when he was at SIL. I never understood a word the guy said. I mean, I'd have a whole conversation with the guy. I'd talk to Lita. I'd say, what the heck did that guy say? I don't understand what he said. He was a brilliant guy, absolutely brilliant. He wrote poems. So I thought I'll buy a book of poems to understand them better. I never understood one of the poems he wrote. I mean, the poems didn't even sound like poems to me. So the guy he had a wife who covered him. So his wife would follow after him to tell you a little bit what he said. But great guy, amazingly brilliant guy. This is the Ethnologue site. So if you have time to look at it, you'll like. So summary, Steps in translation, they do a language survey, they form a team. This is relatively new in the last 15 years. Team formation are a team of people that do it, not an individual. There were always a couple or an individual who went out and did language translation and slaved at it for many years. Now they do a team approach, and the team approach works really good. And yeah.
More than one language. Several.
Yeah, and they might do more than one language. So that if you have an area that has more than one language, they'll try to incorporate them as long as they can, and not a lot of difference. They'll try to incorporate and get more than one language done. So that has helped a lot. It seems obvious, but things that seem obvious now are
How many people would be in a team?
There could be up to 15 people in a team, okay, and as low as 4 to 15 people on a team, and they even use now with the internet and crowdsourcing and things like that. They have a websites that you can go to where you have left. A lot of these people have left their homeland and are living in Europe or the States, and they can get on and help with translation. So they know the language. It's not written down, but they can assist with that and just work with it through it's a way of gathering people together that that speak the language who aren't in one location. And then they'll do the adaptation tools. There's a lot of tools to use today to help with language translation. Thank goodness. They'll translate the scripture text word for word, and word for word is a big deal because you get into an environment that does not have a word for lamb, or they don't have a word for grace or words like that, and you have to forgive. There's no word for forgive. The one translator girl was in a village one time, and she was struggling to find a word for forgive, and she was ready to give up because she just couldn't. And then one night, she attended a session where everybody gathered around a hut and put their arms around each other. And she said, "What's going on?" They said, that person offended somebody here, and this is a way of making things right. So then she said, putting their arms around each other. That was the phrase that related to forgive. So it's a job. I mean, when you're doing that and you're searching for words, it is a job. I think if I had to do it over again, I would be a linguist. Okay, linguist that's an interesting study, language.
When you say word for word, you mean meaning for meaning.
Yeah, word for word would be what Lita means is, what Lita said is, meaning is a hard thing to translate, okay, and that's the bottom line is meaning. We have all kinds of words that are even spelled the same but have different meanings in the context they're used. So it's very hard. That's probably the hardest part of a translator's life is to translate meaning. And then they'll do literacy training. Obviously, the people can't read, so they'll train them how to read. The younger people, it's important. Once the younger people stop learning, if you have no younger people that know your language, the language will die out. There's no doubt about it. And then they produce the scriptures. They get those printed by various organizations. Produce printed material, and then they refine and check. And they're always under scrutiny for a long time of having the work reviewed by various experts around the world. So those guys like doing that. I can't imagine that work. That would drive me crazy, having to do that on a full-time basis.
And when you send a team in there, however many people it is, does anybody have knowledge of that language?
Yeah, the team is the people who live there.
Oh, okay. All right.
So the team, there's somebody that comes in and works with the team from the outside, but the team is, and then there will be a team. Those people will surface leaders that you can give responsibility to. So the team are the people that live there. It's just a matter of working with them and teaching them how to convert. You have to pick a font. You have to pick an alphabet. Okay, and there's international alphabets. There's a lot of work to be done just to form a structure. And then finally, Revelation 7 kind of says it all. After this I looked, and there before me was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language, standing before the throne and in front of the Lamb. They were all wearing white robes and were holding palm branches in their hands. So it's kind of neat to picture that. okay? People and language, from every tribe, people and language. Okay. What? Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I was sitting here the whole time,
Uh-oh.
and you just at the very end got to literacy. Because a lot of those places you go to, the people can't read anyway.
Right.
So what was the use in translating a Bible that they can't read?
Yes. Well, and that is, you're right. That's part of teaching them reading is part of the thing. Now, keep in mind, the generations that come, if you teach young people how to read, the other organizations go in and produce other material in those languages. So they get health primers and all kinds of things. So you have changed. Most of the places that don't have a language, they feel very unworthy that their language is not worth translating. Okay, that's kind of a negative overtone to everything. So translating their language not only helps them just get written material after once literacy is accomplished, they can read written material, but it also helps them in their self-esteem in the future. Once they have an actual language that's their language, that's written down and produced, and other people are producing material in it, that's a big help. Microsoft works hard at, if you look at Microsoft and you look at all the languages that they've put in print. Now, obviously, they don't have all these, but they've also helped on major languages.
The audio project.
Yeah, and then they have, Lita keeps reminding me of things I forgot. The audio projects, they have a whole group that will give you audio tapes. You know, you can buy tapes. The voice recorders today are digital. So you can produce digital tapes of the whole Bible or portions of the Bible. So they will convert digital tapes into the language. The translators will do that, or the people will do that, and then you can pass them around, and people can start listening to the language before any formal training takes place.